Thank you, friends. Thank you. Warm greetings. Welcome. Hello. Hey, warm-hearted welcome. Greetings. Thanks for joining. Here we are again, another session of Dudjom Tersar Ngondro practice. And we'll begin as usual with like a short time to reflect or contemplate on the teachings, the Dharma. So there's always these three ways we poise our mind and open our heart that we've been taught by all the lineage masters, including our own precious root gurus, lineage masters, Venerable Khenpo Tsewang Rinpoche, Venerable Khenpo Tsewang Dongyal Rinpoche. And these 3 points are have joy and appreciation, or refuge, this renunciation mind. And secondly, Bodhichitta, the genuine heartfelt wish for all beings to be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. And I personally will become enlightened to bring this about, to make this happen. And then pure perception, kind of relaxing, confidently, kind of allowing the kind of natural intelligence and brightness and spaciousness of our own hearts and minds to just be as they are, natural, bright, clear. You can call this divine or pure, to let our body, speech, and mind rest, relax naturally, say purely. So to kind of just confidently be in pure body, pure speech, pure mind, this deity, mantra, dharmakaya, and that everything we experience around us is a mandala. It's like an enlightened world. So with this joy and appreciation or gratitude, bodhicitta, and pure perception, we become receptive to the Dharma. So we all do that together now. Thanks so much. So as usual, there's kind of like a theme to kind of contemplate around. And then this week, the theme is pulling the rug out from under oneself. Pulling the rug out from under oneself. That's today's theme. And so I thought today, I was thinking this morning, it's kind of fitting. It's about to be New Year. Just, a couple days. So often a good part or practice of New Year, of like allowing space for fresh blooms to come out, is a little bit clean out the cobwebs. Clean house a little bit. So, pulling out the rug from under oneself. So this is a theme that's like very strong and I think very direct. And as a good Dharma practice, it's actually about one's own mind. My mind. And how my mind gets locked into extreme views. So this time is going to be a little bit of a survey of all the ways my mind locks itself into extreme views. And I need to pull the rug out from under that. I need to kind of dismantle this fixation. I need to relax this tight grasping egoic, what is it called? Cunning, self-important ego ghost. And Khenpo Tsewang Dongyal Rinpoche's prayer to His Holiness Dudjom Rinpoche, which we read together, is Sangha across the world. In different pockets, this poem to His Holiness Dudjom Rinpoche. It's a strong line. May we really mingle our minds and become like these great masters, these really noble ones. And to do so, we really have to release our grasping. It's the path. So we have to release grasping onto eternalism and nihilism. Holding too tightly onto something, pushing everything else away too strongly. Acceptance, rejection, constantly distorting what's natural, the natural flow. Instead, we're locking, freezing, fixating, grasping. So we're the only ones that can really release this. We have to learn to, what does it say? Be the master of our own minds. be our own teacher, to pull the rug out from under ourselves. This is kind of what this path is leading us to, so we can actually stand up confidently on our own 2 feet. And so to begin, I thought the natural place for me to begin was actually read something from Ken Rinpoche, Khenpo Tsewang Rinpoche. And it was a quick little story that's online on PBC, padmasambhava.org. There's personal stories about Khenpo Rinpoche's. And my brother, Andrew, he related a story, and I'll just read it. It's short. He called it, "Look to Your Own Mind." And this is Andrew. "One day I was walking with Khenpo Rinpoche up the driveway at PSL during a month-long retreat. Rinpoches had been giving the most profound heart essence teachings of the clear light great perfection for several weeks. After some time, I asked him, what makes us qualified to receive these profound and secret teachings? And he told me that we'd come from all around with a sincere interest and curiosity in learning and practicing the Dharma. And that was enough for him. Then I mentioned to Rinpoche how it seemed like some of us treated the teachings so casually, leaving precious Dzogchen books next to the shoe rack and garbage can with little mindfulness. Khenpo Rinpoche stopped and looked at me in the eyes. And he spread his arms out as wide as he could. And he said, the view of Dzogchen is like this. As vast as the sky. So big. When you start looking at the faults of others, oh, they're doing this wrong, that wrong. Your view gets smaller and smaller. And he moved his arms closer until his hands were right next to the side of his head, like a horse with blinders on. That's not Dzogchen. That's not even Buddhism. In Buddhism, we look to our own mind all the time. That's the practice, and that's what we should do. Then Andrew said, I never forgot that. So I thought to emphasize that at front because this is like a little bit of a direct, I'm like kind of going to say some direct things. So this is really strong. There's strong teachings. Dharma can be very clear reflection sometimes, especially when we're pointing out extreme views. And this is, the pointing is going back to me. How am I doing this? Because that's the only thing I can really do anything about. My mind, my heart, my motivation. At the same time, I also think to some degree for myself, and it's like I have to say something now, need to actually kind of like dust this off a little bit. Now in the kind of AI information explosion age, it's so easy to be clever about Dharma. It's so easy to sound Dharma smart. It's still very difficult to really absorb the teachings and let them change you. So, when it's a time that's so easy to repeat these profound instructions, we need to freshen this up. We really need to freshen this up. So, part of my New Year's resolution is I should want to reread a book that was really impactful for me called Poison is Medicine, Clarifying the Vajrayana. This is a free PDF download book, ebook by Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche. Poison is Medicine, Clarifying the Vajrayana. My resolution is to reread this book this year. So I think I can do this resolution. It's really kind of short, 200 pages. It's so very readable. So I'm going to start with some quotes from there to freshen the context. Pulling the rug out from underneath oneself. Page 173. Only those of you who have genuinely set your hearts on learning how to transform how you think should even consider setting foot on the tantric path. We really have to be willing to change. Another quote, same book, page X. This is right at the beginning. Dzogtsar Khyentse Rinpoche. The Vajrayana is the best thing that ever happened on this planet. Not only does it train us to think outside of samsara's box, it shows us how to be inside and outside the box at the same time. And although the tumultuous ocean of jealousy, anger, pride, doubt, greed, and delusion that fills our minds can feel extremely daunting, the Vajrayana tells us it needn't be. The antidote to all that poison is not outside us, but within. We already have exactly the right dose. Not a single drop is missing. Nothing needs improving, upgrading, customizing, or adapting. Our innate wisdom is the antidote we seek. It is perfectly intact and available for immediate use, as it always has been. Is this idea too hard for you to chew? If it isn't, why not have a go at tracking down your own innate wisdom? How? By following wisdom's footprints, which are your emotions. The essence of the Vajrayana's message is that poison is medicine, just as it is, with nothing added and nothing taken away. I hope and pray that none of you ever lose your enthusiasm for and curiosity about this glorious, brilliant, incomparable path. How fortunate we are. There's so many juicy quotes from this book. One more. Page 233. By changing just one word of the Buddha Dharma, by changing just one word, you effectively take on full responsibility for the spiritual path and enlightenment of all future practitioners. I, for one, lack the courage to do such a thing. So we're talking about lineage teachings here. And this is all around a similar topic that's been debated in Buddhism for centuries. What's the essence? What's the expression? What's provisional? What's definitive? And so all inquiry into extreme views is trying to ascertain the difference between these two. What is definitive? What is provisional? What can be adapted? What is unchanging? This is a very deep topic in Buddhism, and all these Buddhist philosophical schools debate this topic. And we can look at this in fresh ways, which I think is kind of needed in some ways, and we just have to be doing adaptive things and not break anything essential. But some basic, secular, simple frameworks for boxing up in a really simple way some extreme views is looking at these few boxes: pre-modern extreme views, modern extreme views, postmodern extreme views, postmodern extreme views. This is not in Buddhism. Okay? These words aren't in Buddhism. Similar to the Buddha didn't teach in English. There's a lot of different communication things we're using now the Buddha did not use. English, internet, these nations. There's so many filtering systems we're using that weren't talked about. So here's an additional one that's really simple, and it totally fits with teachings. So pre-modern extreme thinking. What are pre-modern extreme views we need to kind of dust off and open up and relax our grasping mind around? This is just some. It's like a grab bag list that I came up with just really quickly, actually. Pre-modern extreme views. These are all the ways that we are literalist, fundamentalists. My path is the only path. My teacher is the best. My outfit is the right one. My Sangha is the best. All the outer features, we think this is the essence. Tibetan language is the best. Sanskrit is the best. This is just fundamentalism. We can value the ways things are expressed and not become a fundamentalist. Just because we like hamburgers doesn't mean they're the best. Just because Buddhism works for me doesn't mean it works for everyone. Just because a certain teaching in Buddhism works for me today, it might not really help me tomorrow. This is a constant shifting dynamic, this mind of mine. And this shifting mind of mine, what it's scared of doing is it's basically losing control. So what it does is grabs on and tries to stop the movement, the change. And the most obvious way we do this is with literal stuff, like clothing, colors, sounds, shapes, the obvious, tangible, sensorial stuff. And this is all extreme view. And this goes really deep. So this is just the very easy stuff to recognize. This is extreme. Anytime we're in a mode where my religion's the best, and then we say, oh, there's bad things about others, that breaks the 6th root downfall in Vajrayana. Oh, my way's the best, my practice is the best, your practice, I tried that for a while, it wasn't so good. That breaks the 3rd root downfall. This kind of fundamentalism, the Buddha taught very clearly. Don't look at the teacher, look at the teaching. Don't be in celebrity obsession mindset. What's the teaching? What's the Dharma? Don't obsess with the doctor. Actually, carefully consider the medicine. This is so straight up bedrock Buddhism. Okay? So this a whole set of extreme views is really something to look at. Especially as Dharma goes into other countries, other times, other languages, other configurations. And there can be a lot of mistakes made with this. Misascertaining what's the expression and what's the essence. And that's what all of this kind of extreme views, we have to be really careful. What needs to be preserved? What can be adapted? And that's why we have lineage. There's ongoing systems of checks and balances of actually trying these things out over long periods of time and not just recklessly, quickly changing things up either. We're not just innovating all these wonderful, valuable things out of existence so quickly. We're trying to preserve the root value, the essence of Buddhism without changing a single word. But it has to be able to zing, like clearly, crisply ring in people with like genuine interest. And that's on the skillful means of the practitioner. And for my own mind, how do I skillfully make the teaching come alive in my own mind? And to some degree, I really need to get out of this mindset of my way, my teaching, my this, my that is the only way, the best way, or insert some other kind of rigid, reifying, calcifying, grasping that says my way is the best way, every other way is not as good. I'm right, you're wrong. This standard black and white binary thinking is so obviously not nearly 21st century anymore. I think this is very self-evident at this point. Hyperpolarization, maybe it's not that evident to a lot of people, but for Buddhists, this should be really obvious. So that's the general bucket of pre-modern literal fundamentalism. I can go into this really with a lot of detail, but our time is really short. There's the good versions of pre-modern things, and we'll get to this at the end quickly. There's the extreme ways of doing these things. There's the healthy, balanced ways of doing these things. So then going through the extremes first. The fixation, what needs to be kind of freshened up. Oh wait, extreme modernism. How am I extreme modernist? If I say the teaching has to be logical, has to be rational, has to make sense. Where's the data? I want to see the statistics. It has to fit in my box, right? This is a little more subtle because my box now is not just the way I look, but it's how I think. My system of logic, my sense making, my internal box. So it's not the outer features, the house I'm in, the landscape, it's how my mind functions. Sweet. So we'll get to the view here in a minute. This is all really kind of pointing towards the view. But so what are the ways that I can fixate on my logic? Is it has to be linear? Same way, it has to be nonlinear. Does it have to be human-centric? Has to be non-human-centric. These are big pattern boxes we fit everything into. How can I not as human? Well, the great Bhumi Bodhisattvas, they don't do that. They've given up that's why they emanate as in other bodies, in other realms. They don't, if you go to the Raksha realm, the Naga realm, they don't look like a human there. They look like a Naga. It's not human-centric. They're reflecting what's actually helpful for the beings that they're in contact with. This is really flexible to how can we do this, you know? What's like learning language is a very good example. If you're speaking with someone who only speaks French, if you don't know French, the limit of your capacity to communicate, to connect with them, to actually share intimate experience, to tell jokes and laugh at the same time, is severely limited. So it's up to you as Bodhisattva to learn French, to learn what it's like to be a squirrel, to consider what it might be like to be a Naga. What is it like for other humans that aren't in my shoes? This is standard Bodhisattva stuff. What's the world like in someone else's shoes? Not just how do I treat them the way I want to be treated. I treat them the way they want to be treated. This is a Bodhisattva approach. And if we demand everything fits into my logic, my sense-making, my way of doing this is just modernism, hyper-rationalism. Has to make sense. And it always means my sense-making. There's a lot of different sense-making. And we can look at that. And so that's when we get into postmodern. Postmodern says, what are you talking about? Which lens are you talking about? Which frame? Male frame? Female frame? Non-binary frame? Old frame? English frame? Indigenous frame? Tibetan frame? Indian frame? Squirrel frame? Animal frame? Which way? Because if we assume there's one frame everyone else has to fit in, that's called, hegemony, right? I mean, it's just empire. This is classic colonial move. And this is a no-no. Everyone knows this now. You can't just go into some foreign country and just change everything the way you want it. Even though we do this. I just recently did it. It's called tourism. So this is a problem with extreme kind of thing that opens up in postmodernism, hypermobility. If I have the ability, the luxury, the advantage to move into different situations, places on the earth, different fields of exploration, different ideas, different cultures, different online communities. Am I playing according to the terms that are established in the community or in the culture or in the ecology? Or am I just coming in and I'm going to tell you my story, my feelings, my truth, my opinion? Because that breaks living ecology. You go somewhere as a tourist and you make everything have to fit according to your opinion, that's literally colonialism in the name of postmodernism. It's really funny. And my mind does this. As we move between different situations more and more, as the Dharma is doing now. How does the Dharma go into a new culture and not break the culture, but be shaped by the culture, but shaped in ways that don't break the fundamental essence of the Buddha Dharma by even one word? This is the same inquiry of provisional versus definitive. So, how do we not break living ecology? How do we actually respect a place when we arrive into it? How do we show up and listen instead of show up and yell? How do we establish good faith dynamics in a conversation? These are all so relevant. And for bodhisattvas, this has to be the impulse of bodhisattvas. It has to be. They said, Khenpo Rinpoche has said so many times, Buddha Shakyamuni never forced anything on anyone. He just saw what is available to be helped, to be nourished, what's the readiness of others, their disposition, their readiness, and then what's my capability, what's the communication, what's the shared experience to kind of work within, and then the Buddha reflected that. This is so deeply, this is called being a custodial species, as Tyson Yonkaporta says. We go to a place and mutually benefit. This is the way of the Bodhisattva. It's not going to a place and just pushing my thing. One way to go to a place and push my thing is demand everything to not make sense. This is a so tricky mind. The hyper extreme modernist says everything has to be rational. Extreme postmodern, everything has to be non-rational. And this is totally against Buddhism. Definitely against Nyingma Buddhism. They always say it's a union of study and practice. Another way you can say that is merit and wisdom. Another way you can say that is positive grasping and non-grasping. Another way you can say that is like helpful concepts called study and contemplation, and going beyond concepts. That's called wisdom of meditative insight. Always both. We have to include both the rational or any way of any sense making, a coherent pattern system of knowledge. In addition, we have to go beyond all patterned ways of making sense, because we have to become flexibly able to move between them without breaking them. So if you play tennis, I play tennis. You play basketball, I play basketball. You speak English, I speak English, or Spanish, or French, or computer programming of many different kinds of computer programming languages. Bodhisattvas can flexibly move between games. We often think of it as dreams. That's why they're so skillful. How do they do that? Because they have the prajna, the wisdom, the non-conceptual insight to actually see it's just a game. It's just a dream. This is just an apparition. It's mere appearance. So they don't get caught with the result of the dream, of the game. So then they can give the victory to others, make it a good dream for someone else. But you have to know how to play the game you're in to do that effectively, to support someone else. You have to actually vibe with the living local ecology. And then this goes into also extreme view of postmodernism. Knowing how a game works, knowing how an ecology functions, knowing how a company runs, knowing how, the history of Buddhism is very different than letting the Dharma affect you. Just using clever Dharma words, studying Dharma, study. His Holiness Dudjom Rinpoche said this in Mountain Retreat Instructions. If you become an expert scholar of Buddhism, but you don't ever apply the teachings in your life, it won't really help much. When you die, you'll have been able to say many things, but it didn't really change you. It didn't really make you of much benefit to other beings. It's so valuable to have Dharma books around, even if you never read them. But it's so much more valuable to actually read them, try to absorb the meaning, so you become one with the Dharma. You let it change you. And that means we can't always hold things at a distance. And that's something we get really good at. Once we go kind of beyond extremism of postmodernism, we start to be able to get a very encompassing bird's eye view. We start to see a lot of big patterns. We start to connect a lot of dots between different systems, between different Buddhist schools, for example. What's the perfect example of this capacity turning on? The Nine Jhana system. It's a meta framework, it's a meta system. How do all the jhanas fit together? How do all the Buddhist philosophies fit together? How does one philosophy like Babashika go into the next one like Sautrantika, go into the next one like Mind Only, and then Madhyamaka, then Tantra, then Dzogchen? That's a meta theory. It's a meta theoretical framework. This is a function of healthy postmodernism. It links up different systems into larger coherent wholes. This is straight up bread and butter Buddhism. This is like essential Nyingma Buddhism. Otherwise, if you don't agree to that, you don't have 9 yanas. You just have a Buddhist monolith, 1 yana. And so this is an extreme approach. Some people really take that approach. 1 yana, it's called Dzogchen. There's only a single sphere of Dharmadhatu or something like that. And then don't need all these other techniques, concepts, rules, practices, Ngondros, and all this stuff. Because I have this single sphere of Dharmadhatu. I just need 1 yana. The great master Vimalamitra said he would be reborn every 100 years to correct exactly that mistake. As if Dzogchen is mere emptiness. It's not. So a very simple, direct way to say this, that can be unpacked a lot, is Dzogchen does not equal Zen. The 9th yana is not the same as the 3rd yana. It's obvious once you put it in a 9 yana framework. What's the big difference between Dzogchen and Zen? That's a genuine question. This is the question that Vimalamitra comes back every 100 years to clarify. This is what Nyingma Buddhism has said a long time. What's the difference between the 3rd yana and the 9th yana? It's called the Tantras. What is the primary difference between the 3rd yana, Bodhisattva yana, which includes Rangtong and Shentong? Emptiness of self, emptiness of other, emptiness of self-fixation, emptiness of all the adventitious things clogging up our Buddha nature. What happens after that? Pure body starts coming out. We start to see pure body. Pure speech starts coming out. We start to see pure speech. That's called deity and mantra, otherwise known as Tantra. Because Zen establishes pure mind, just like in Dzogchen. That's what the great Madhyamaka middle way teachings say. Pure mind is the same in 3rd yana and the 9th yana. It's emptiness, great emptiness. But Dzogchen is not just emptiness. It's a union of relative and absolute. Just like great Madhyamaka is too. Union of relative and absolute. Except the difference in great Madhyamaka, it's not pure relative yet. The Tantras includes all the pure relative, all the way up to Dzogchen. And that's the big difference. It's quite different. Impure body and pure body. Impure speech and pure speech. Impure mind, Sem, is like duality mind, monkey mind. And Rigpa, wisdom mind, jhana, is very different. So Zen has pure mind. Dzogchen has pure mind. What's the difference? Great purity. It's called pure speech and pure body. That's the Rupakaya, not just Dharmakaya. That's why the Buddha taught all these tekpas, paths, yanas. I was just happened to have the tremendously great fortune to be in Mexico. Received teachings from Dzogchen Tersar Rinpoche. So astounding. He said, if you do Dzogchen, you can't leave out a single tekpa. Not a single yana. Not a single path. Not a single way of communicating with beings. Can it be the great completion if you leave out a single path? It's not just the 9th path. It includes the 8th path, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. It includes everything. Great completion. Venerable Khenpo Rinpoche, he said this. Dzogchen is like $1. All the yanas are like the coins that make up the dollar. That's why it's a great completion. It includes them all. It's not just the outermost ring or the single sphere. It's a single sphere that includes it all the other yanas, including Zen. It's the beating heart. It's Bodhichitta, including renunciation mind, refuge. That's called foundational Buddhism. It has to be included. These are like really core teachings. So that mistake has to also be corrected. Not just hovering high in the sky saying big, lofty, rainbow-mouthed words. Actually being on the ground in living experience, which means you have to see, what's my mind doing now? What's actually a skillful way to deal with it? Who's around? What's available? How do I sync up with things in healthy living lineage ways that actually honor the ecology of the lived, what is happening right now in real time? That's called lineage, Jnana Buddhism, not just high-level emptiness-only talk, which in one simple way is just called anti-intellectualism. All these concepts, they get in the way of Rigpa, right? But for the Buddha, they didn't get in the way of his Rigpa at all. He was able to speak, walk, talk, chew gum. Wisdom includes all the other tekpas, yanas, approaches, skillful means. It's not just the emptiness ones, because that's a whole thing in middle way. I'm kind of complaining. I'm not really complaining. These are actually serious things that are mistakes happening in Dharma. Like they're mistakes, extreme views we can hold. If you really get into middle way Madhyamaka, you don't prefer absolute over relative. That's like saying I'm a middle way person and I prefer nirvana over samsara. This is the exact thing that's being corrected in the middle way. Absolute and relative are the union. You can't, if you actually go beyond all conceptual designation, you can't even say there's liberation because there was never imprisonment. What do you mean nirvana? There is no such thing as samsara. What do you mean many? There's not even one. If we really go beyond conceptual designation and we have this kind of wisdom as a stable, abiding experience, then we'll include every single other dream of every single other being. And if we just talk this way and we don't viscerally actually experience the utter flexibility or the emptiness, the openness, the fullness of awareness, when it's really not locking up and fixating, we're just talking about it being free, but it's so clogged up in there. This is just dream talk. It doesn't help at all. It just makes you seem kind of like, when you use your usual jerk habits, but you say nice, sweet, emptiness, spacious things, it makes people want to run away from the Dharma. Oh, look at this non-dual guy. It's almost always a white guy. It's almost always a guy. And they talk big emptiness things. Oh, big anti-intellectual things. It's just empty. Don't get so caught up in all these concepts, man. Just be here now, right? And then they very conveniently don't forget concepts like, where's my salary? Where do we go for vacation? These are all concepts. In middle way, all this stuff concepts. If we think we're trying to get somewhere for enlightenment, that's a concept. We're only want to hear nice words about ourselves. That's a concept. I mean, there's no even outside out there in middle way. This is all sutra. There's not even an outside. What are you even talking about? How's there even an inside? That's all just concepts. If we're really abiding in that way, you know what we'll be like with people? We'll be so tender. Because all these games and dreams and nightmares we're all creating for ourselves is so preventable. It's just such an excruciating, you see it in these masters' eyes. They see all this suffering beings go through and how they're doing all of it to themselves. It's a complete self-created mistake. There's no such thing as suffering for these noble ones. They have such tender-hearted bodhicitta kindness. And that's actually why they can be really clear too. Because when we start doing really destructive things to ourselves, to each other, to the planet, to all these other species, to some degree, the Bodhisattva also has to say, no, you can't just go around and murder people. And you have to go, I'm putting you in prison. Okay, there is no prison, there's no freedom because there's no imprisonment and all that, but you're going to jail. There are such things as wrathful means that actually stop super toxic, destructive, egoic, obsession. It's Rudra obsessions. My power, my story, my truth. Only me. There are such things, and that's also a very deep kindness that these masters have to do. So that's overcoming extreme postmodernism or sometimes it's called integral, which I know for a lot of Buddhists are like very triggered by that word. And I'm sorry about that, that you're so triggered. But it's like being triggered, when, I don't know, someone says something that's like not taught in a sutra or a tantra and you get triggered. This is really such a fundamentalist approach to Buddhism that I'm just very sorry for, actually. It's very sad. It's really sad to me. Because it's so puritanical. And none of these great masters are like this. His Holiness Dalai Lama has been going to these Mind Life conferences for 35 years, learning from the specialists of all different fields. And he humbly, curiously listens to them talk. And almost all the time, they have no interest in what he says. They're not there to learn about Buddhism, for the most part. This is what participants say. But His Holiness Dalai Lama keeps coming back. He's so fascinated to learn about all these different ways human beings make sense. How they love, how they grieve, how they understand, how they imagine. Why? Because he's a great bodhisattva. He wants to serve beings. Play as many games as you can. Learn as many languages as you can. Guru Rinpoche did this in India. He learned all the languages in India. That was like his time as a scholar in India. He didn't just sit there in the charnel ground doing nothing. He did that too. He was in samsara and out of samsara in the same time. In the box and out of the box. So this is what kind of undoing this extreme habit to always only my box. My literalist fundamentalist box. My rational hyper-empirical box. My feelings only, my personal story, listen to me emote in my specific way box. My bird's eye view, big system dynamic thinking, but never actually be held accountable to a lineage, extreme box. Lineage Vajrayana Buddhism destroys all these boxes so kindly. Why? Because it loves all the good, healthy aspects of those boxes. Pre-modern box, family, integrity, character, hardworking, true to your word, honest, thorough, caring of the land, future intergenerational worldviews, caring about other non-human beings around you, spirits and animals. This is all pre-modern awesome stuff. That, you know what happened? Unhealthy extreme modernism destroyed all that. But what did the healthy modern thing do? It gave us science. It gave us literacy, human rights, women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights. It gave us, weekends and, Social Security. Modernism gave us world-centric, we all one kumbaya, a single world vision of common humanity. In a global view to see the environment as a single system and not just little nodes of weather. This is all modern approach. How amazing. The Buddha taught this as verify the teachings for yourself. The Buddha, the great Turtans always put back treasures when they took out a terma because they didn't want to disturb the natural balance of the environment. They were 100% world-centric. We're all in this together, way beyond world-centric. They're talking about other galaxies. They're loving other beings of other kinds we've never even seen or thought of. They're so beyond world-centric, even global. Just our planet, that's it. They're interplanetary. They're like inter-universe cycles. Postmodernism, how do they do it? Buddha loved context. He loved plurality of views, multiculturalism, contextualization. He called it interdependence. That's his core Buddhist teaching. Everything depends. Dependent origination. The 12 links that Laia talked about just over these past 2 sessions. Interdependence, it depends. This is called context sensitivity. There's no one fixed way. There's no one-size-fits-all Buddhism. There's many Buddhisms. And then the healthy postmodern way, not extreme healthy. How do all these systems of sense-making and love-making and playing and imagining and grieving, how do they all fit together in large, coherent, patterned holes? This is what the 9 jhana system is all about. This is just core bedrock Buddhism. It's essential Buddhism. And the Buddha took all the healthy aspects of these ways of making sense. Healthy pre-modern, healthy modern, healthy postmodern, healthy postmodern, post-postmodern. And he even went beyond that. How? He even included all this stuff those views are not ready to deal with yet at all. And we know what it's called. It's called Tantra. Pure body and pure speech. And he gave millions of teachings of the Tantras. How do these other beings function? What are these subtle ways of interdependence? How do these extra cognitive capacities of the mind turn on, and you get all these cities and these extraordinarily expansive, boomy realizations where you can see way back in the past, way far into the future of probability trees of likelihood and cosmic karmic habits, and way out of the box thinking, way beyond rationalism, way beyond felt pluralism, way beyond big mapping according to what humans know currently according to our science. He went so far beyond science and included science. This is all the Tantras. We have not grown into this culturally yet, but Buddha taught this 2,600 years ago, and that's just during this universe cycle. He's taught this so many times before. And Buddhas of all the past, present, and future will keep teaching these Vajrayana teachings. This is the best thing that ever happened on this planet. At the very least, it's one thing that has gone way beyond anything we've conceived of yet, evolutionarily, definitely in terms of mainstream modern framing, including postmodernism or integral. So these are the healthy ways. Dudjom Tersar Ngondro, this is pick a part of this Ngondro. It perfectly exemplifies this. Instantly, the space changes to be a giant refuge tree with Guru Rinpoche in the middle. All the Dharma teachings, all the Dharmapalas, all the Dakinis, all the Arhats, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of this whole fortunate eon. Plus your mom and your dad, your enemies, the strangers, every single... And this is actually the actual lived experience that we're trying to be with right now. We're not trying to paste it on our view as if we're watching a movie. We're trying to viscerally, in an embodied, totally interdependent way, be in the living mandala of Guru Rinpoche in the refuge tree with all this enlightened activity happening, with all our parents and all the parents of the 3 times, this totally in love with the Dharma, and they're just showering down blessings on us. And we're trying to be in a state of mind, an openness of heart, that viscerally is totally surrendered and 100% full-on believing in this is the real thing happening. That's called Vajrayana practice. That's so far beyond rationalization. It's so far beyond postmodern. It's so far beyond integral. And there's whole lineage systems of doing this. And none of them break the internal ecologies of one another. You get the Dudjom Tersar Ngondro, bam! And then you can instantly arise as the Karma Kagyu Ngondro tree. Then the Longchen Ningtik Ngondro tree in their entire world systems with their own patterns and dimensions and shapes and sizes and sounds and mantras and lineage instructions. And they're these entire vast landscapes, these whole worlds of actual patterned integrity that utterly perfectly work. And they can flex and flow between one another instantly. This is Vajrayana. This is way the top. There's just open the doors wide. The Vajrayana view is so vast, and this has been taught so thoroughly, and this is what we're doing here all the time. I love going and being around friends and having a good meal together and talking. I love that pre-modern, healthy, pro-social connection, humanness. That's good. But Vajrayana does a lot more than that. And I love science and thoroughness and logical acuity and really going through the rigor. Vajrayana does a lot more than that. And I love the felt sense story making and genre bending and mashing up of different songs and movies and things. And Vajrayana does so much more than that without becoming a total wasteland fragmented mess either. But actual these internested ecologies of practice where you get these internested philosophical systems and these internested practice modalities. It's called the 9 yanas. And there's all these interactive ways we can help beings that we don't know anything about yet and other planets by communicating them with colored light. Vajrayana, this is core Vajrayana stuff. That's a big difference between Vajrayana and Sutra. we can actually serve beings through light. That's a standard bedrock. That's an orthodox Vajrayana view. So I hope this is a little bit of like a fresh, kind of like a little freshness in the room. There's so much freshness to be had. Vajrayana is such a vivid view. I mean, this New Year's opening, and it's another cycle. But here, another quote, and then I'll finish from this Poison is Medicine, Dzogchen Khenpo Rinpoche. 229. I feel that in the future, a non-Tibetan teacher's single most important quality will be their longing to introduce the Buddha Dharma to every single sentient being on this planet. They just love the Buddha Dharma. Another quote, this is a really good one, and then this is a good one. You'll like this one, and then I'll stop. Ooh. Oh, there's so many good quotes in this. An Abhisheka, empowerment, is the one occasion in life that is truly worth celebrating. Ooh, that's a strong one. All right, but this is the one I think you really like. And then I'll be done. Sorry. Oh yeah, page 173. A crystal clear understanding of the view will provide you with an easily accessible safe haven. No matter what expression changes in any way, no matter what has to adapt, the crystal clear understanding of the view will provide you with an easily accessible safe haven. It's still not the final quote. That's the last one. Sorry. Okay, here it is. 229. Pema. Sorry for the multimedia thing. It's just 21st century now. Now we get to juggle all this stuff. Sorry. Okay, here it is. Okay, here it is. Yeah, good. This is page 229. Yeah. This is good. All right, and then this is conclusion. Thank you. A teacher's genuine concern for the Dharma is often their most attractive quality. Experts can be impressive when it comes to presenting facts, theories, and complicated philosophies. But the person who has the most effect is the tireless volunteer who serves coffee after a Dharma talk and then goes out of her way to introduce new people to the expert. Her palpable enthusiasm for and conviction in the Dharma is infectious, and most of us respond better to unvarnished, unselfish, heartfelt enthusiasm than to endless lists and definitions. As we try to draw more people's attention to the Dharma, please try to embody the kind of irresistible enthusiasm and concern that others find so attractive. I feel that in the future, a non-Tibetan teacher's single most important quality will be their longing to introduce the Buddha Dharma to every single sentient being on this planet. I've met many practitioners over the years who embody this quality, but they are rarely Buddhist teachers, authors, scholars, professors, or Buddha Dharma promoting yoga teachers. More often than not, it is the single working mother of three whose longing to connect everyone she knows with the Buddha Dharma is so intense that she willingly goes the extra mile to spread the word. This kind of enthusiasm does more for Buddha Dharma than all the Buddhist professionals on the planet. The luxury of anonymity and not having a Dharma title to live up to or the responsibilities to maintain may also help. Enthusiastic volunteers have the ability to communicate one-to-one with friends and loved ones without seeming overbearing or dogmatic. I always include them in my prayers for the long life of the Dharma holders. We are all a part of this living lineage tradition. But the only way we can love it with enthusiasm and not make it just be another empire fundamentalist religion, which the Buddha never taught, is to love it in a way that it's not all filtered through all these extreme views. It's not only the only way for everyone, but it's so lovely. The Buddha Dharma is just so magical and lovely and scientific, rational. It's such a coherent philosophical system. It's a really rewarding way of life. And it's like, it's hard. The path is hard, but choosing samsara and all the negative emotions and just like kind of splattering them around is so much harder. It's endless. But if we do a little bit of the hard work of churning kind of the milk of our own kind of path, we will really get the butter or the cream. We'll like actually get the reward of freedom, of happiness, a long-lasting happiness for the benefit of all beings. This is really possible. It's very actionable. It's super practical. And the higher we go into these teachings, the more we include on the path, the more elegant the path becomes. We can include more in these distilled, kind of compact, essential nuggets, which are called pith instructions. And if we let those pith instructions of these higher tantras, of Dzogchen and the tantras, if we really let them resonate and change the fundamental ways that we hold ourselves as being so stuck and so fixed and so removed from interdependence, if we really let the power of the blessing of those pith instructions really change us, soften us, challenge us, then we really can become enlightened this life. All the teachings say that. And like this really is so possible. Our great masters are living examples of what happens when you really mingle with the Dharma. So thank you. This is a little longer.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hope it's not too harsh and strong, but it's with love, and, for myself too. These are all hard habits to break. So may I break them in a very elegant, lovely way.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I do a quick summary? Really quick?
Yes.
So I know there might be really concern, like bringing up extreme views, that I'm like adding my own extreme views by mentioning like non-Dharma kind of categories like pre-modern, modern, postmodern, post-postmodern. And that's a very legitimate concern. This concern is how the Buddha Dharma has stayed like a living lineage for over 2,600 years. The great Kabje Tinli Norba Rinpoche, he said in his book, recent book, The Ruby Rosary, he said to change a single line of the Dharma is worse than intentionally murdering all of the sentient beings in the universe. So I think I can assure you, I'm really concerned about not having the Dharma get messed up. This is a genuine concern of mine. So then where's all this coming from? We can really look at the sutras, the Buddha's Theravada teachings, Sutra of Inexhaustible Knowledge. This is where the Buddha taught the 4 reliances. He said, don't rely on the teacher, rely on the teaching. Don't rely on the words, rely on the meaning. Don't rely on the provisional meaning, rely on the definitive meaning. Don't rely on conceptual mind, rely on wisdom. If we really look at this, he's showing us the view we need to take and how we refine it by giving up extreme views, the same sequence that we went through today. Don't rely on the don't rely on the teacher, the teaching. That's like saying don't rely on the doctor, rely on the medicine. This is giving up literal fundamentalism. Just believe the person. He said, no. Look at what they said in terms of the medicine. That's called science. But then he said, don't just stay on the surface level of science. Don't rely on the words. Rely on the meaning. There's layers of science. There's layers of nuance. Don't be fundamentalist about just the phrase or the word or the rational one system. There's multiple systems. That's called healthy postmodernism. But don't rely on the provisional meaning. Rely on the definitive, which means all the teachings go towards absolute truth or wisdom, the definitive teaching. So we definitive teaching, absolute, is unchanging. It is not a static, oppressive, relative, universalizing structure. That's unchanging wisdom. But we can't just talk about this using conceptual mind. We can't rely on conceptual mind, but actual wisdom awareness. Don't just stay above the teachings, talking about the big maps. Actually have to be in a state of Rigpa, have to be in post-conceptual, non-conceptual wisdom awareness, and then engage all the suffering, nightmares, and dreams of sentient beings. This is like going beyond postmodern. It actually has to be a lived experience, which then includes the tantras. And that's how you get the fullness of Dzogchen, the great perfection, to include all those. That was outlined by the Buddha in the sutras. This is all straight bedrock Buddhism. And the sutras, the most exoteric. So it's important always to locate where these teachings are coming from, and with specific examples. And this is really so important, always vitally important to do this, so we're not losing track of what's essence and mixing it up with what's kind of expression. Thank you.